Ah, Big Ten West football. Unless you are Ohio or Michigan, if you are playing a Big Ten West team, you are playing Big Ten West brand of football. So it should be to no surprise that we were in the middle of what was considered by all accounts a shootout in Big Ten West standards. As we look at Illinois preparing a 2-point conversion, they run a little sprint out where the ex-receiver sneaks through a condensed 3 layers of Nittany Lions defense. His quarterback eventually makes his way down to him as the third read as he would throw it through traffic, and this receiver would catch it through collision, winning the game, and everyone would go crazy. On the surface, you may think, well, of course, they just won a football game. An upset even as a 2-5 team was taking down the number 7 ranked team in the country, so, of course. And I mean, a score of 20-18 would also not really catch the eye too much of anyone's attention, but a look beneath the surface is going to show us a much, much darker picture. A picture of pain and suffering beyond human understanding. A picture of the legendary 9 overtime game. A game that drug on for far too long. Almost like a pesky subscription that you want to get rid of, but it's just too complicated to. Which is why I'm glad that I have someone on defense for me, like this video sponsor, Rocket Money. Rocket Money is the app that you need to save and manage your money better. This is the perfect app to use to cancel those unwanted subscriptions and so many others that I had completely forgotten that I had. That's right, I didn't have to go out and play defense myself, so like the opposing quarterback this game, I did my part and sat on the sideline and let my defense handle business the same way I let Rocket Money take care of the service calls, and I started saving money immediately. So don't let these companies take you to overtime, and download the Rocket Money app today or go to rocketmoney.com/Isaac Punts to not just take control of your financial future and hand this one off to Rocket Money so they can close out the game during regulation this time, which is completely the opposite of what our two teams did. So first, let me explain who these teams even are that got us to this momentous occasion. In the orange corner, we have the one, the only Fighting Illini. This team was just, were they just trying to figure some things out. Through the first 7 games of the season, they just didn't have a strong identity. They were switching back and forth between 2 quarterbacks of Sikowski and Peters. Their running back room was strong, but it wasn't until a dominant performance in week 6 that they even realized the stud they had in Chase Brown when he trounced my alma mater in UNC Charlotte for 257 rushing yards, while the rest of the team would put together a combined 79 rushing yards for a whopping 336 yards of rushing on the day. The receiving core wasn't just weak, it was just hard to find anyone to consistently get them the ball. But they had a serviceable defense who typically would hold strong against specifically Big Ten opponents, while outside of that, UTSA and Virginia both dropped over 35 points on them. But one thing was for sure, they were consistently inconsistent. Between playing close games and getting blown out, you never knew if you were going to witness a shootout like the 37-30 game against UTSA or a low-scoring grind like the 13-9 Purdue game just 3 weeks later. But if we knew one thing, it's that they weren't particularly strong this year. So going into a week 8 matchup against Penn State, things were looking particularly bleak, especially with what we know about Penn State. And why is this, may you ask? Well, let's give you some further background into that team specifically. They're kind of like the litmus test to the Big Ten. If you're going to be a good Big Ten team, you're going to beat Penn State. That's all but a guarantee because they have built this reputation of smacking around teams that aren't up to snuff, but never being able to get over the hump against teams worthy of anything. I mean, let's look at 2022. They finished 10-2, not counting their bowl game, and their only 2 losses were to the 2 ranked teams that they played, and both of those 2 teams won by over 2 scores against them. This year, it was quite literally the exact same thing, except taking down an Iowa team who was kind of like Penn State, but of the Big Ten West, but as soon as they played their 2 ranked opponents, they lost both times. This is just their role in the Big Ten. If you want to be that top 10 team, you have to beat Penn State, and they will gatekeep that number 10 position. This year was no different. Number 12 ranked Wisconsin would fall victim to this litmus test in week 1. They'd trounce an undeserving of consideration Ball State in week 2, kindly remind Auburn that Bo Nix only plays well in warm weather climates. Week 3, crush an FCS opponent, dog walk Indiana. Then they got their first top 3 opponent in Iowa, and all according to plan would lose. Penn State. Always good, never great. So, with this history and knowledge, Illinois, a team who was nowhere near consideration of a top 10 spot, should have been promptly on the scale of teams to get demolished by the Nittany Lions. And the game started off all according to plan. Penn gets an early interception, is forced to punt shortly after. Illinois punts back, Stout punts back again. Oh yeah. This is Big Ten football, baby. But after a Blake Hayes punt dares the Nittany Lions to put together an actual drive, and by drive, I mean 3 passes for 89 yards and a touchdown, as from this moment on, it looked like things were quickly going to get out of hand. Penn State would go and get a strip sack where they'd convert that into a field goal, but then Illinois would actually put together a drive to score a touchdown before exchanging punts to end the half with this, chef's kiss 55-yard punt to the 6 from Ravens legend Jordan Stout thrown in the mix, ending the half with a very normal 10-7 score. Quite the high-scoring game for Big Ten West standards. Then, after a punt and a fumble, the two teams would square off in a field goal kicking competition where they'd both miss and decide that's enough of trying to score, let's go back to punting. But at the start of the 4th, the Illini would cap off a great drive with a simple 37-yard field goal, and 3 punts later, we were staring down the final drive of regulation. A drive to really show why Illinois was the team to beat and should be an elite contender this year, as they run the ball 3 times and throw an incompletion and a 2-yard completion to take us to overtime. Come on. You couldn't have forgotten we were going to overtime, right? That's literally the only thing special about this game. But here, in this dreaded overtime, we would get the perfect storm. You see, these teams were struggling to get anything done on offense. But due to overtime rules, you wouldn't really have to get anything going on offense. And the reason this game has been low scoring has been thanks to some incredible special team performances. So they were about to go into peak special teams form. The first overtime drive was going to result with Jordan Stout facing a field goal from his 9-yard line, and he would absolutely stripe it. Then James McCourt of Lions and Dolphins fame would follow up with his own 39-yarder before they get the ball back due to college football rulings, where he would connect in a 22-yard field goal and dare Jordan Stout to attempt a field goal of his own. Jordan, being a man of high renown, would do just that and connect from 40, making up for his missed 40 earlier that day. And then we would get to the bad overtimes. You see, in this quick back and forth exchange, you might think these teams looked pretty competent, but this was all about to change. We all knew what was about to happen. It was time for people to pull out all the stops. Here, Penn State opens up with a reverse pass, executed almost perfectly, but the ball is just centimeters short, barely out of reach of the quarterback to successfully reel it in, and now they were running a play away from this game being over. So Illinois gets the snap. It's a sprint out with a running back on the flat route, beating his man by a step, and the ball is a bit high and also off the fingertips. The game would go on. Overtime number 4. Illinois is back up, fake jet sweep. Quarterback drops back, has an amazing matchup out of the backfield. The running back is heading to the middle side of the end zone. He has a singular backer on him, which is the perfect situation because the quarterback, as he runs out, he goes towards the pylon. As soon as that backer commits to stop the quarterback, he can dump it off to the running back. And if he doesn't commit, there's no way he's going to be able to stop the quarterback from diving through that pylon and force Penn State to score. It was the perfect call, but when the linebacker bites, it's underthrown. So now it's Illinois who's on the back foot, especially as their starting quarterback is holding his wrist while walking off, and by the look of the replay, it's not looking too hot. But 3 overtime offensive plays, and what should have been 3 scores all completely squandered, and Penn State gets the ball. And off the snap, it's actually really well defended. The quarterback has to scramble a bit, but then it happens. A beautiful pass over the middle, right where only his receiver can get it, but it bounces off his hands. Oh my God, this game is never going to end. Twice now has a team been given the opportunity to win this game, and twice has it been executed almost perfectly, except for a tiny mental error to cause them to go to their 5th overtime. And now, Penn State tries to just run the ball, and I mean, they've arranged a grand total of 2.1 yards per rush this game, so I'm not sure what they thought was going to happen here, but it went just about how it went all game. Now, the Illini are in the driving seat, and now it's the quarterback's fault that this game doesn't end, because if this ball is thrown center mass to his receiver, it probably gets caught as it's hard to defend, but he makes him reach for it, and the linebacker can get a hand in there and break it up. The game goes on. Overtime 6, and things are getting sloppier as this ball is nowhere near the receiver, who is honestly in perfect position to end things. And naturally, if Illinois does not score, you know what's going on, as Penn State with the sprint out to shovel pass, and we were the closest we were going to get to winning this game to this point, but the tight end gets stopped at the 6-inch mark. And then the next closest play was going to happen immediately afterwards on overtime 7, where on the handoff the running back high steps through traffic but comes up just centimeters short. Holy cow, these offenses can't get a single play 3 yards. So Illinois says, fuck it, we have over 350 yards of rushing this game, maybe we should hand the ball off. And boy howdy was Penn State ready for that one, as they lose a solid 5 yards on this play, but fret not. Overtime 8, both teams would figure things out. Jet sweep pitch to 23, find the hole, cut through it, put 2 points on the board, as Penn State would also hand the ball off and finally find the paint. So now the fateful call. You know how it ends for Illinois, but what goes wrong for Penn State? In overtime 9. They probably should have scored on 50% of this attempts, but this time it wouldn't really be a mental mistake that cost them. But Illinois' defense just does their thing. Look at this play unfold at the line of scrimmage. Not a single man without a set of eyes on him with a loaded stance ready to make a play as this ball comes out. It doesn't have a chance. Batted by the linebacker under it with the corner over top ready to break it up anyway. They read it like a book, which after 4 hours of playing against the team, you better know their offense better than your own. So, how does Illinois put it away, but with nearly the exact same call they made on overtime 3, which was the first of this 2-point style. But this time, the linebacker bites a little bit too much on the play action. Number 14 gets 2 or 3 steps on him this time. The quarterback's eyes eventually make their way back to him, and we conclude the longest, most painful game in college football history.